For individuals, I mean?
I could move over here.
That's great.
Got a lot of people helping out too.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this planning board meeting, September 18th, 2003. I'd like everyone to please note that this meeting is being recorded by Westford Cable Access Television and may be rebroadcasted. Note planning board member Bob Schaffer is participating remotely due to geographical distances, and all planning board votes will be taken by roll call. Dylan O'Connor is as absent unexpectedly. He will mull in for the next meeting. I'd like to welcome the select board for being here tonight. Our town council, Justin Parada from KP Law, Chief Chambers, and of course you folks in the audience. We'll start with open forum. Anybody have anything for open forum before we begin? Joe?
As call the select board to order.
Sure, you can do that, and we're going to do that after. That's fine. Go ahead.
Let's call to order now. Tom is traveling, so just the four of us tonight.
All right. Open forum? Yes, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, some of you are already aware, but there is an online survey that you can take about multifamily housing, so we'd appreciate if you folks who haven't already done so, you can go to the town's website and you'll see there's a link to take that online survey. So we're trying to get some feedback from you folks as we move through this planning process. So thank you very much.
And I would like to mention, I think that staff did a great job at the strategic planning retreat concerning the McMack and budget stuff, so that should be recognized.
And the committee, McMack, did a lot of work for that as well, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else open forum? All right, seeing none, we'll go to our first agenda item, public hearing PB 2312, amend zoning bylaw to define, regulate, and establish criteria for firearm businesses. Again, welcome and thank you for coming, Select Board. I know that you guys had spoke and have come up with a recommendation that we'd all love to hear.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So last Tuesday, the select board met, all five of us, and we discussed the idea of having, which we approved, not discussed, we approved, Jeff, if I get my language wrong, correct me, but a total of no more than 4 establishments, firearms establishments, no more than 2 of which may sell retail firearms and ammunition.
Yep. If it's helpful, I got a very brief punch list of the overall items, if that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Okay. So in the packet is a red line version, and as you mentioned, the red lines show the recommendations by the select board to the planning board for consideration. As you mentioned, one of the items is to limit the total number of special permits, allowing firearm businesses of any kind to 4. And so that would include both the retail or firearm dealers that you mentioned, as well as gunsmithing and firing ranges. Another thing it would do is it would limit the total number of special permits authorizing firearm dealers to just 2. So like you said, selling firearms or selling ammunition is limited to just 2 special permits. It also clarified that one location, even if providing multiple elements of service, would count as just 1 special permit in terms of the limitation on the number of special permits. And then it also recommended that the special permits granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to Section 3.62 that results in a firearm business would also count towards the applicable limitations of special permits. And then there's one other red line change in the packet. And so if you may recall at a prior meeting, we had heard that there were some questions or comments raised about prohibiting the subleasing of space to another firearm business. And so working with council, we added some language. Rather than an outright prohibition, we said an additional special permit would be needed to allow the subleasing. And so what that would do is anyone trying to sublease, they would need their own special permit. If there was a special permit in place, that would have to get modified as well. That would ensure that there'd be a public hearing process for that. The police department would be fully involved, and the planning board would still have their discretion for the special permit.
Can I ask a question about that?
Oh, yes, please.
So if you have a firearms business that has a special permit, and they're going to sublease to another firearms business with a special permit, does that now count as, assuming for a minute that there's a special permit to be given and that the planning board approves it, does that now count as 2 special permits at that location?
So in my opinion, and of course, council will correct me if I'm wrong, that would count as 1 because it's 1 location.
But also, wouldn't that violate the 500 feet?
So the planning board, in granting a special permit, can grant waivers for that. One of the considerations is if it's adding an element of service at an existing business location.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I think if it's a sublease, you'd have to have 2 separate special permits. So the special permit that was granted initially, and the person didn't. if
No,
the-
I understand that part. My
Yeah.
question is, when you talk about the overall limit of 4, do I now have 2 at one location, and so that there are only 2 left to be
Yes.
given? Okay.
Yes, yep.
I mean, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
don't have one location that's subleasing to 3 or 4 different entities,
Yep.
and all of a sudden I've got 5 permits,
Yep.
but counting only as 1.
Right, yep. So each entity and use would have to have its own special permit. That would count towards the limit.
Jeff and you are not on the same page.
We're not on the same page.
I don't think we're on the same page.
Okay.
I thought the language indicated, it clarified that multiple elements of service at one location counted as 1 special permit for purposes of the limitation. So you could have multiple special permits at one site, but the way I read it is that at that one location, it would count as 1 towards the limit.
So when, at least from my perspective, when we were talking about that last week, in my head, I was thinking it as one entity, okay, you know, company XYZ was selling, you know, guns and ammunition and was doing gunsmithing.
Yep.
And that would be 1. I was not thinking about the fact I could have company XYZ and ABC at the same location and that it would still count as 1.
Under-
So that's
Understood.
where I'm coming from.
If I might just, so, I mean, from the standpoint of what I had intended, or we had intended, if the main lease is held by a gun retailer, and he or she is not qualified to, say, do gunsmithing, and they want to sublease to a gunsmith, then I think you're back to the idea if you get the functionality of 1. But if they wanted to sublet to a second firearms retailer, that to me would count as 2. Now, maybe I'm,
Okay, that clarified it better for me, but I'll obviously divert to
Yeah,
council.
I mean, I think because we have firearm business, a single firearm business, which would be the entity, like you're saying, that has the special permit, even if providing multiple elements of service, shall constitute 1 firearm business.
So if it's 2 businesses, distinct businesses at one location, you're saying that counts as 2?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that that's how this would be read and
Okay.
interpreted.
Right, so if one selling red guns and one selling blue guns, that would be 2 permits. If one entity is selling guns and the other entity is a gunsmithing, it's 1 counted against.
No?
No?
My understanding of the intent and the way we drafted it is, I think, how you guys are explaining it, that if I'm one business,
Yep.
but I have multiple service elements, I'm a retailer and I also am a gunsmith, that would count as 1. I'd come in and I'd ask for my special permit, I'm XYZ gun business, these are the things I want to do, I'd get 1 special permit. So if I had a space that I could sublease to someone, and they came in and said, I want to do any of these things, be it another firearms dealer or gunsmith or anything, they would need a different special permit, and that would count towards either the 4, only the 4 if it was a gunsmith or a range, or both if it was a dealer. The dealers count to both.
So that makes sense?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
The very last thing?
Let's go back 2 sentences.
So,
Rewind 2.
if someone came in and said,
Stop at 2.
if I have if a business wants to have multiple elements of service, we're calling them, right? They would need a special permit, and that would count as 1 towards both totals. But if that entity subleased to another business with a different name that wanted to do something different or the same, that would count towards the totals as well. It'd be a separate special permit that was needed that would count.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, if we think that's unclear, we can tweak that language. For purposes of this section, a single firearm business, even if providing multiple weapons of service, shall constitute one firearm business for purposes of limitation on special permits. I think the implication by absence there is that a different firearm business would count towards both tallies if it was a separate business, given the definition.
So maybe we should just explicitly add that so it's crystal clear?
I just want to make sure it's really clear.
Okay, okay.
So can I ask a
Sure.
question? So say you have business ABC that is selling firearms,
Mhm.
and then they decide to add gunsmithing, so they have to obviously come back and have their permit modified. Is that one, or is that two?
That would be one,
One,
because it would
because it's
still
the
be the
same
same
company.
business, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We get it.
Yeah, I understand.
And I think there was a question the select board had about possibly the limitations, buffer zones. You didn't actually vote on what you thought would be appropriate there and want to discuss further.
Right.
We took no position on that one yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed to be, this doesn't put it, but there seemed to be no agreement amongst the parties.
Yep.
And so that seemed to be a fair discussion for tonight's special session.
Sure, sure. Do you guys want to weigh on that? You want to ask my board? Do you have specific thoughts on it?
Happy to hear from you all first, yeah.
I'll start down there. Darren, their question was about the buffer zones and limitations with the children gathering question. Have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm happy with the way it's written. If there's suggested changes, then I'm amenable to hearing those too.
Joni?
I'm also happy with the way it's written, because I think it's consistent with the buffers that we have from other businesses.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
Bob,
Yes.
any thoughts on the locations? Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm as long as we have a buffer zone, I'm fine with the different manner in which we're discussing it.
All right, so when we say buffer zone, I think there were two different things. There was one with the school, and then a location with the child care center and any facility where children under 18 may congregate. My personal thought on that is, I'm amenable to the school separation, but when we start looking at the finds it a primary purpose to serve persons under age who commonly congregate to participate in scheduled or structured activities. I think in town that is so fluid and somewhat ambiguous that we may be just asking for trouble if we continue with that language. I'd be inclined to exclude that language. So 6.6.5C. And I think there was talk of increasing the buffer zone from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. So, if that's some type of compromise, from the schools, but get rid of 6.6.5C. Any thought on that?
My thought is I take this as structured, meaning like for example, the taekwondo or the karate facilities. Was that what we mean by that? It's not just where kids are hanging out, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
But it's the determination by the special granting authority of,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And again, businesses change quickly,
Yeah.
so I think the thought is there, but
Yeah, I guess we'd have discretion there, but would that leave us open to appeal if someone said, well, there's only 12 people that are underage there, not...
So there are always, we talked about this language the first time. I think this language is drafted clearly enough that it would withstand any kind of scrutiny on its face. But certainly someone could say, I disagree with your determination that it is one of these place where children congregate. That becomes a question of fact, judge would have to make a determination as to who's right and who's wrong. You know, it doesn't strike me as something that would be open to appeal all the time. It's pretty rock solid in its language, but I can't say it couldn't happen.
We'll let the, unless it's a question specific, I mean, comments will.
It is to this.
Okay, what's your question? Please come up.
Sorry, but it's applicable to this. Diane Wood, 122 Depot Street. The discussion about children congregating is what planning board and town meeting voted on and approved in a previous town meeting, in a previous bylaw. I don't have it in front of me. It's either the marijuana.
Okay, so this isn't a question. Okay, so we'll let you comment.
Okay.
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 Select board, thoughts?
John?
I think
Please.
the only question we were talking about was the 1,000 feet for schools. Of course, that would really only affect one school, and that would be the tech school.
Right.
But that was the one that we were questioning, whether or not 500 was enough for that.
Okay.
But we just couldn't come to an agreement as a board to press for it. And I think the 500 foot's pretty consistent with some other bylaws we've had.
Jeff, is 500 feet consistent with our marijuana overlay district?
So I believe with the medical marijuana overlay district, that is consistent. Let me just, I think for medical marijuana it is.
I think it is too. My recollection is that it's 500.
I think my take on it is, we have discretion here, so if there's an applicant that comes in and there's a place next door where suddenly it's a daycare or something, and we obviously would take a look at that. I mean, we'd have to consider that.
Yep.
If it's, yeah, I think, we just have to have discretion here, have the ability to say no if we don't think it's the appropriate location.
Yes, please.
So I guess it says, primary purpose, so that to me raises two questions. So I guess one is, we've always discussed the little goldfish swim school, clearly meant for kids, right? Build-A-Bear Workshop is a retail establishment, not really a organized activity, but a birthday party is an organized activity, so how would that fit in? That's the first question. And then secondly was, if you've got a karate studio that serves both adults and children, how are we determining what is primary?
Yeah, I mean, again, it'd be left to their discretion when it was before them.
No, its
You know,
primary purpose is to serve.
Primary
Yeah.
purpose, they'd have to make a determination as to what that meant. In other instances, case law talks about it being the most important aspect of the use. That's generally how it would be looked at as to whether or not it's primary. You know, it's hard to, unless you just start listing things like karate studios, it's hard to, you sort of have to have a little bit of discretion in the language in terms of how this would be applied. I think at one point we did have it more listed, and then this was a change to something that set up certain factors.
Yep.
Yes, Joe.
So first, I can confirm that for the medical marijuana, it is a 500-foot buffer. Second, I think in the initial go-around, when we looked at the locations where children commonly congregate, before we clarified the language, I think we had approximately 9 locations that might have fit the criteria. And then when the additional language was put in there to emphasize that it was, congregating, it wasn't just where they could show up, but it had to be scheduled and structured, then that got reduced to 6 locations in town. However, since during this public hearing process, I think one new one has come in, and it was a karate type studio. So, so the clarifying cut it down to 6, but a new one came in. So we're, to the best of our knowledge, at about 7 locations.
Yes, please.
Do we have a graphic that shows what that would look like if we had a 1,000-foot buffer for schools, by any chance?
We may have benefit of an online viewer, but it would require some patience. It's a little slow, but we can turn that on. And right now, the only
This is the 1,000?
the only facility that would create such a buffer that would interact with these 2 zoning districts would be the Neshoba Valley Technical High School.
So, And my feeling is, I think that would be a nice addition to what we're talking about this evening. I think there's lots of people who have come to me and expressed concern, particularly about the school buffer. So I think it might be something we want to move forward with.
So 1,000-foot buffer?
Yes.
Just for the
Only
schools?
Schools.
Yes.
The rest of it staying as 500?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
just,
no, it's good to clarify.
Bob, do you have anything you want to add at this point?
No, I do not. I'm fine. Thank you.
So I think the consensus between the two boards is to keep the 6.6.5 C.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
sounds like the only issue is whether it's gonna be a 1,000-foot buffer from the school or 500 from the school. I think that's the only issue we have to
All right,
decide.
so let me ask the planning board. Darren, any thoughts on the buffer?
no, I'm okay with 1,000. That's fine.
Joni?
Honestly, I think if it makes people feel better to have the 1,000 for the schools, it's fine. I don't think it really makes a difference
No.
personally, so if it makes everybody feel good, then 1,000 for the schools.
Bob?
Yeah, I'm flexible on that. It was just said either the 500 or 1,000. For me, the critical buffer is the buffer between the firearms businesses.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Me too. All right, so, planning board, do we want to have any discussion on the select board's recommendation on the permits to, and the uses?
Yep, I'm happy with that new language that's written.
Okay. Tony?
I am very happy with the new language, I think, because by allowing the four for other businesses and again, it's a compromise. It meets the concerns of the community, but also still allows businesses to come into the town. So I'm happy with it.
Okay. Bob?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Do we want to discuss anything else before we go? Okay, Jeff.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention, we have a number of these draft bylaw amendments out there at many of your seats. There are 2 changes made today that were shown in blue line based on some comments we received from either board. In my opinion, they're not substantial. The first one is in section 6.6.6.6. This is where confirmation is required to show that they submitted a security plan to the police department. This just clarifies that the confirmation must be in writing and it must come from the police department, not the applicant saying that they submitted the information to the police. And then the last one, again, we had a comment under the definition section on the last page. It's just moving some language that was at the front of the sentence to the end of the sentence, and they thought it read better and would just be more clear. So, in my opinion, not substantial, but we just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. All right, Chief Chambers, anything you want to add before I open this up?
No, sir.
Before I open up public comment, I would like to just remind folks that we do receive emails that are sent, but we certainly can't respond as individuals, right? That's why we have a public hearing. So if you did send an email along, doesn't mean we didn't read it. We spend a lot of time reading the emails and correspondence. They're also included in our package, which gets sent out and is public also. I will open this up to the public. I'd like, please, just comments on what we discussed tonight and any new information. We certainly know how everybody feels. We read the emails, and we've had several of these public hearings. So kindly keep it brief, and for new information or questions about the new amendments, please.
I just have a question about 6.6.
Excuse me, can you just tell us who you are?
Oh,
please?
I'm Marilyn Cattler, 10 Groton Road.
Thank you.
Unit C5. 6.69, I know it's changed a lot, but I'm curious about the waivers. I want to know what that means, like when that would come into existence. We might have talked about it before, but I'm very confused.
Jeff, you want to
Be happy to, Mr. Chair. So what 6.6.9 relates to the number of firearm businesses in town. And so, as we've said throughout this process, we wanted to make sure that we would not unintentionally end up with an effective prohibition on any of the elements of service for firearm businesses, because we believe doing that would create a vulnerability in the review of this bylaw, and so could make us subject to a lot of challenge. And so what this is saying, let's take the sales of firearm businesses, sales of guns and ammunition. Those are both the retail, the firearm dealers. There's a limit of 2. So hypothetically, if one business came in and only sold ammunition, and a second business at a different location came in and only sold ammunition, that would result in an effective prohibition of selling firearms. Do we think that is likely to occur? No, we don't. There's a lot of opportunity where many businesses who sell firearms will also sell ammunition. But what this does is it allows the planning board the opportunity, not the requirement, but the opportunity to waive that such that there would not be that missing element of service. And so in our opinion, that makes this far more defensible if this were to be challenged or just simply reviewed by the Attorney General's office.
So like manufacturing, the
Yep.
same thing?
So, for instance, say now we're looking at the overall cap of 4, no matter what type of firearm business.
Yeah.
Say 4 special permits existed, but say there was not one yet granted for gunsmithing. Any of the existing ones could potentially come into the planning board and try to add that element of service as part of their business. But if that gunsmithing does not yet exist in town, it's an opportunity for the planning board to consider waiving that limit of 4, so you would not be prohibiting gunsmithing in town.
And so then my last question would be the firing ranges, since we already have 2, would that also be?
So right now,
Movable.
the existing, if I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
please.
sorry. The existing firing ranges, they are existing uses that predated our zoning bylaw. They get to continue as they are, and they do not count towards the limitation of 4.
So
But if
that's,
they apply for a,
So
I just
if,
want you to add that part, Jeff.
and whether it's the 2 existing clubs or some other pre-existing non-conforming use, if someone went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and sought special permit relief to change or extend a pre-existing nonconformity that resulted in a new firearm business or a new element of cert where it did not exist, that would then count towards the applicable limitations.
okay, but you couldn't just come in like, there's 2 gunsmithing and somebody else wanted to do it. You couldn't just say, you couldn't waive that, but you could waive it if there were 2
If there was a missing, if something was missing. In my opinion, the authority of the board to waive that kicks in when it would otherwise result in a prohibition where the service isn't yet being provided in town.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you think of the extreme example, it sort of helps, and Jeff explained it perfectly, but suppose there were 4 gunsmiths in town. Because the total limit is 4, that would effectively prevent any other type of use. So this is the opportunity for the planning board to review that limit. The planning board then still has to grant a special permit. That doesn't necessarily mean that that service would necessarily get added. But the goal of that section is to prevent a situation, as Jeff described, where effectively a certain type of firearms use, be it retail, gunsmithing, or a firing range, or ammunition, if we're defining those separately, were effectively prevented from coming into town.
Wow. So we could have 4 gunsmithing and then two stores could come in, or only 1. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody would come in to sell firing arms and ammunition, and would
If
they
there was
be?
a service that wasn't available, then yeah,
Yeah,
you wouldn't add 2 more guns retail, you'd only add 1 if
you
there
would
was-
add 1
Right.
if it wasn't there, so we'd have 5. Wow, okay, thank you.
Paul Fossbender, 14 Texas Road. That has me puzzled. Why would the special permit granting authority get into a situation like that when the second company comes along who, if we have someone who's selling ammunition only, when the second one comes and says, I want to sell ammunition only, why wouldn't the board say, well, we already have that covered, we need someone selling retail guns. If you can do that we'd be a lot more favorably, to your application.
Right, so that's certainly something that the board would be able to look at. There's a phrase somewhere, it's a bill of attainder or something. You're asking them to answer a question that's not before them yet, effectively. But certainly, the services that are already available in town could, or certainly would, play a role in their decision on the special permit in the situation that you described. And that's true for any type of business that comes in and asks for a special permit, right? That's one of just the basic special permit criteria in the bylaw. The service or the benefit provided to the town from granting the special permit is something that the board could consider. So the extent to which there are already businesses that are offering one or more of these services and a new one comes in to potentially offer it, the planning board certainly can take that into account.
So if we're concerned about that being an issue in the future, does it make sense, instead of having 2 categories, to have 3 categories: retail guns, retail ammunition, and gunsmithing, or something along that line, so you don't get into the situation where you give away all your permits?
Well, there's did we settle on 3 or 4? I forget the last.
So we looked at,
The 3 definitions, right?
Yes.
So there's 3 definitions, so they're already categorized out that way. Right, so you have a firearms dealer, a firing range, and a gunsmith. So
Right.
someone that has files for a special permit will have to apply under one of those definitions.
I'm just trying to anticipate and see, is there a creative way from a legal point of view that we can avoid getting into the situation where we give away our 4 permits to gunsmiths and don't have any left for retail, and now we have to grant 2 more retail licenses?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it all sorts of different ways, and I think both boards have analyzed umpteenth different ways to do the numbers. It sounds like they're sort of on the same page as the 2 and 4 working. Certainly, you could define it any way you wanted to. You could define it, you could have 8 or 10 different definitions and categorize each of them separately. But I think, both boards feel this is the most workable way to do this here.
Okay, thank you.
Barry Rosenberg, 10 Groton Road. Have we agreed to do 1,000 feet for the schools?
This is a
The buffer.
discussion. We haven't voted on anything.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Christy Bates, Pierce Avenue. First of all, thank you to everyone here for all the work that you've put in, and I'm glad to see what you might be voting on. Hopefully, we will get the turnout at town meeting to pass this. I do want to add just one thing, because I did attend the strategic planning meeting where there was great information about multifamily zoning, and I'm just wondering, with that in mind, one thing that struck me as we're going through that is that the overlay district is where the firearm businesses are going to be should this pass. So I'm just wondering if we might want to consider a buffer from residences. I can envision a multifamily zoning, a multifamily area with multi-use, and the way it is written now, a firearm business could move into the bottom floor of a multifamily structure. So I don't know. I know it's late in the game here, but I just wanted to throw that out there as something to consider. And then I have another question, and I'm just wondering if there's been any communication recently with the Attorney General about Acton's bylaw and their special permit numbers.
Jeff?
No additional clarification. We did not speak with them directly. There did not appear, as of Friday, to be any additional information on the municipal law unit's website.
Thanks. And I'm just wondering if our town council perhaps has had communications directly with the Attorney General about this, and if they have any
I'll give
sense.
advisory opinions.
The Attorney General does not want to talk to anybody.
No.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gloria Miller, 14 Hutchins Way. I would like to thank both boards. I've come to these hearings and to see the responsiveness and to see that you've heard concerns from the community and and some of the proposed changes you're talking about tonight, I think is very good news, and I think is very good news for the potential of passing a workable standard that the entire town can be comfortable with at town meeting. The one thing, and please, this is with all due respect, this is a friendly request. There has occasionally been discussion about the parties to this dispute. This is not a property dispute between two neighbors quibbling over where a fence or a shed goes. This is a townwide issue. It affects all residents. There aren't parties. There may be sides, there may be different perspectives, but as much as I absolutely applaud all of the work that's been done by advocates, I'm just a resident here. I'm not a member of any particular group. I don't think there are sides or parties that can reach some sort of compromise or anything on behalf of the entire town. We trust you as our elected officials and as our boards to come up with the best proposal to take to town meeting that is really just intended as a friendly request to try and avoid language that suggests that any group might speak on behalf of all residents. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good point.
Hi, Kathy Ricketson, 5 Westford Hills Road. Want to thank the boards, the chief, especially all of you who listened to us, who took the time to review this. It's been quite a learning curve to see how towns are left on their own. There is no advisory from the Attorney General's office. But one thing I'd like to say is, after this, after our special town meeting, if, hopefully we get something passed, our boards could, write to the Attorney General. Our boards could write to our representatives and ask them to consider in their legislation. The Attorney General's office does issue guidelines on other matters, and guidelines would be so helpful for towns when they're starting this process. Littleton shocked the whole state. Now towns are left scrambling, so beyond our own town, I think you might want to consider what you could do for the others that are going to face this as well. But thank you so much for all of your work, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Jackie Cuniff, 5 Tadmuck Road. I'm also a teacher in town, and I'm just so happy to hear you increase that buffer with schools. I know that it's only right now affecting one school, but we never know, how things are going to change over time. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate all of your time and support the bylaw and the compromise that you've come up with. So thank you.
Chris Klimps, Texas Road. I just want to ask people when they comment if you speak louder, because I'm sitting back there and I can barely hear anything that's going on. There's some ambient noise in the room. And the group up here seems to talk among yourselves, but some of us in the back cannot hear the comments. And the same with the speakers. They speak to you people, but we can't hear what the comments are. In a public hearing, it's nice that the people who are at the hearing, it would be nice for us to be able to hear. I know if you're watching WestfordCAT, you'll be able to hear because the microphones pick that up. But that's just an aside. Everyone in this room, no matter what side you're on, has worked very hard to come to some sort of consensus about this bylaw. So it's very important, I think, that this bylaw passes in whatever state it ends up in at the special town meeting. My main concern is that it won't pass unless 2/3 of the people who are there vote for it to pass. And my concern is that many town residents aren't aware of this issue at all. There's no Westford newspaper. No articles have appeared about this in the Lowell Sun or the Patch. No announcements have been made on the town website or Facebook page. There's nothing been in the town manager's newsletter, even the most recent one, about this major issue. Nothing in the health department newsletter that just came out for the fall season. There have been no awareness or educational seminars like we've done in the past for energy and heat pumps and solar, composting, stormwater fees, the library expansion, the multifamily housing. All those things are deemed important issues. Well, I think gun shops coming to town and the fears that it can engender is something that strategically is really important for Westford residents to know something's going on and a bylaw amendment is being proposed and is coming up. Nothing was mentioned at the strategic retreat that I'm aware of, and there's been no advocacy or here's what a yes vote means, here's what a no vote means, any kind of information coming forth. There's a lot of misinformation in the town about this. There's a small number of very active residents on both sides who are aware of what's going on, but the vast majority of town residents don't know what's going on, or they're misinformed or confused about it. People are misinformed about the Second Amendment and constitutional rights. We're not talking about infringing upon anyone's constitutional rights. We're talking about governing the sales of gun shops within the town. But people don't understand that. They get very confused by one-sided information saying, you're, depriving me of my constitutional rights. People are fear-based. We heard some people at the one of the last meetings talk about, I'm afraid in my home. I want to be able to protect myself with a gun in my home. Nobody's depriving anybody of gun ownership, but that is not something that people are clear about. Even people who sit on some of the Westford boards aren't clear about that. They're very confused. There are lots of choices about what to buy, where to buy. Availability of guns isn't an issue, but it's a cultural issue, and it's something that Westford residents are concerned about. I know there's been a lot of statistics that have been waved about. How many gun shops do we want? 4, 6, 2? What's the national average? What's the town average? We shouldn't be deciding something like this on the basis of national statistics or even statistics to begin with. It's talking about the homogenization of America. It seems like every town has to have a McDonald's now. Every town now has to have a gun shop. That's crazy. When you go vacationing, you want to go to the east and you want to see certain towns with a certain climate. You go to the west, you want to see something different. You go north, you want to see something different. You go south, you want to see something different. Whether it's in terms of what food there is, restaurants, culture, events, stores, and things like that. So our question isn't, do we statistically need 2 of these licenses or statistically want 4 of these licenses? What does Westford want, and what do Westford residents want? I would encourage the boards. There's very little time to finalize this language, and a lot of information needs to be brought to the residents of the town who are actually going to be the ones who vote or don't show up at town meeting because they don't realize that there's a problem. I stood outside this room a month ago and talked to people going into the meeting, and I said, well, are you going to vote for the amendment or not vote against the amendment? And I was so surprised. So many people said, oh, I'm not going to vote for the amendment. I don't want to see gun shops in town. They're already confused about what the amendment is about and for. And that's people who are coming into this meeting. And if people coming into this meeting are confused about what the amendment stands for and what its purpose is and what it's to do, think about the rest of the Westford residents who don't even know what's happening because there's been no communication. I would encourage the boards, update the town website and the Facebook page and get some announcements out. Talk to the League of Women Voters. They normally do something before meetings or child meetings and so forth and talk about either, someone has to do either the pro and the con to the amendment, 2 different groups, or what a yes vote means and what a no vote means, because I guarantee you people do not understand that. Maybe a Zoom presentation or an awareness presentation like you've done for all the other things going on around town to educate people on what is coming up, what the importance of it is, and strategically how it might affect Westford's future. And we do need a yes versus no, an informational flyer. What a yes vote means, what a no vote means. We need that kind of thing. And it's incumbent upon the boards here in this room, and there's less than a month, we need to get voters there. Because if voters don't show up, if they don't care, or they don't know what it's about, or they don't know they need to show up, it will fail for lack of interest, and they won't even know. And if they found out later and thought, heck, if I'd only known that's what it was about, I would have gone to town meeting. That's on us. Thank you.
So I take a little bit of that. There's people, boards in this room that have spent a considerable amount of time answering questions, taking comment from the public. This is an open meeting, it's advertised. We've spent a lot of time trying to explain and come up with ideas and come up with this proposed amendment. I'm not sure what else we as boards could have done to get the information out there. I agree that it's confusing and then there's a lot to it, but we've been here, we've been open and asking people to come to the microphone with questions and concerns. We are going to be writing a report that will be presented at town meeting on the recommendation of the planning board and as a select board of what this will be. I'd be happy to go with the League of Women Voters if they have an information night to explain to people what this is and why we are doing it and the purpose behind this. And again, there is a 2A, there is a constitutional concern here. Town council had talked about it before, that, the constitutional right to bear arms, but infringing upon the ability to purchase arms is a violation as well, which is why we have the protections in there of allowing a special permit to add a service that we may not currently have.
I would say, I appreciate that. I appreciate, as I mentioned before, all of the effort that everyone has put into this. But there are interpretations of that too. I know KP Law also represents or is town council with Sudbury. KP Law came up with much the same as the lawyer is here about the constitutional rights being violated if you don't provide services like sales of guns. Another lawyer in Sudbury also wrote to their select board. He used to be a selectman on their select board, and he was an attorney at law. He took an almost exact opposite opinion, and he said, that's not true. The sales of guns is not a constitutional right, especially if you have, somebody did some research and found there are 50 gun shops within half an hour or an hour drive of this town. Nobody's depriving anyone of the ability or the accessibility to purchase a firearm. Does Westford need to be selling them? That's up to the residents, I think. But regardless, you'll come to the town meeting with a draft and you'll explain it at town meeting. But if you don't have the people coming to town meeting, it's not going to pass anyway.
I agree, but I don't know how that's our responsibility. I can't drag people to town meeting.
So if I can jump in and say something here. Okay, so first of all, I think that these public hearings serve the purpose that Michael said. I hope, at the end of this meeting tonight, are going to have a consensus between these two boards as to what the bylaw is that we are going to propose to town meeting. Ultimately, as we all know, it is town meeting's decision whether or not to accept or not accept it. Between now and town meeting, will there be education about the bylaw? I would think so. I know that the league has their informational meeting. I just read, I think it's in October. Thank you very much. It's October 12th, where this, along with every other article that's on the warrant, will be discussed. The select board goes through the warrant articles at our meetings where we take positions. This will be discussed there, okay? So those things are going to happen. You are right, we have put out information about other things beforehand, and perhaps what will be useful is to have, is to make sure we have WestfordCAT covering it. I can't speak to the Lowell Sun because I have no idea what they publish or not publish, to be perfectly honest with you, Chris. But there are ways that we can get information out there. But at the end of the day, it's up to the residents of this town to come to town meeting. And I can't stand there and force them to come. I can get them information, and then it's up to them, for them to come. And I think, as we've done in the past for for articles, that we will do that again, and then it will be up to, and part of it is up to all you folks, okay, is to get your friends and your neighbors to come to town meeting.
Yes, I think that's good. And also, I think people would appreciate if something could be put up, an announcement, like there's all kinds of announcements.
And everybody gets a postcard in the mail, too.
Yeah, but all kinds of announcements that go up to say, we're going to learn about stormwater, come to this Zoom meeting. We're going to learn about, composting, come to these sessions. An announcement could be put out very easily, a couple lines on the town website, and the town Facebook page, if someone were to put together something that would explain that a little bit, and people would at least know and be able to register for that, if nothing else. At least that's the minimum. And granted, people are able to come to these hearings, but a lot of people don't know about it. They may not have seen the announcement. They may not have seen, and I know that you put it out, but
They're up there, they're out there, you know.
I know they're out there.
Okay? I mean, there's only so much we can do, Chris, and then individuals have their own responsibility too.
I just want to point out, so,
This
yes.
is strategically important.
So there is no newspaper anymore in town, that's true, and.
Pardon?
Well, there is no local newspaper other than
Yeah.
Lowell's.
Right.
We do have WestfordCAT, and Ben's out there tonight. Ben's
He's
been-
done Ben and
Right,
Westford Cat have
every
done
single
borrowed
meeting,
stuff, but it's
Westford
not
Cat's been covering it, so Westford's news medium, like it or not, is WestfordCAT, and they've been informing the public, so if you don't watch WestfordCAT or don't pay
Right.
attention, shame on you.
Right.
But, our news source is WCAT, and they've been covering it, so I don't know what more, again, I don't know what more we can do, what more they can do than, tomorrow morning, you'll see this coverage on WCAT. So I don't know what more we can do locally than use our best local media source.
Again, an announcement on the town website, an announcement on the town Facebook page at a minimum, and some kind of an orientation or a seminar or something on a Zoom meeting, like has been done for stormwater management and all these other things that have come up that the powers that be deem are important enough for Westford residents to understand. And this one has received no attention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Ricketson, 5 Westford Hills. Just to speak to what Chris just said.
Can you speak up because they can't?
Yes, just to speak up to what Chris just said. I'm a volunteer for WestfordCAT, and I think in the 30 years, I've been going to town meeting, one of the greatest things I ever saw was the stormwater runoff video at town meeting, and so I would appeal to you to do that again. And WestfordCAT can, play that video. I agree with the comments here. What does a yes vote mean? What does a no vote mean? Explaining what the bylaw is and the fact that it is coming up would be so effective, and it could be shared. It could be shared on social media, and it could be put on the websites for the different boards and so forth. An issue that's of such concern in the times in which we're now living, I would appeal to you, do it again.
Thank you.
Barry Rosenberg again. So I've lived in Westford 26 years, and most of the times I got to town meeting was because of a mailing. So if postcards should be a definite, minimal way to get people to town meeting.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody again for your time coming. I'd like to thank the select board, town council, town staff, Chief Chambers. I think town staff has heard the consensuses of the boards, and we'll start preparing the draft report that the planning board will vote on at its next meeting. Am I correct, Jeff, in the timeline?
So, I just had a question. So it's, to me, the only two outstanding items is for council to provide language clarifying explicitly that 2 distinct businesses, even at the same location, counts as 2 towards the limit, so language to that effect. And then to change the buffer from schools from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And so, at this point, I guess my question is, do you plan to keep the public hearing open, or do you feel you have enough information to close the public
I think
hearing?
close the public hearing vote.
And then we would be looking for, you've already suggested you would ask us to prepare sort of a draft report and recommendation that you folks will pick up at your meeting on October 2nd.
Yes, please.
And then I guess it's just finalize the language for that. Is there anything more we need for a motion than closing the public hearing and then finalize the draft language based on the version in your packet with comments made tonight that we just discussed, and then authorize us to prepare a draft report and recommendation for consideration?
I don't think we need anything else.
So I have a question about timing, Mike.
Sure.
If you don't issue your draft report until, and vote on it until Monday the 2nd,
So,
October, is that your next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't issue a report and vote on it till Monday the 2nd. The select board isn't going to meet until the 10th. And you've got town meeting on the 16th. And if we've just been talking about trying to get information out to people and having them understand what the bylaw's about, a week isn't really a lot of time to do that.
it's a good point.
I mean, I think we have, pardon?
Do we have a special meeting?
Well, I think we have consensus on what we want the bylaw to look like, so I guess what I'm wondering is if the planning board can vote on it with the changes we've talked to you about tonight, and then have Jeff prepare the draft report.
Well, I think that we were waiting on some language from town council. I mean, would it be prudent for us to hold a special meeting next Monday? Jeff, is that enough time for you folks?
So what I would suggest is this. I think, in my opinion, I think the changes that we're talking about are very minor. And that's, if we capture the intent tonight, I think we can work with council to finalize that language.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally the two changes, right? 1,000 feet, and reference in that one section. What we'll do, we'll reference back to the subleasing section and make it clear that if an applicant takes advantage of that counts towards the total, both totals, the 200.
So I don't think you need to keep the public hearing open to make those changes. And then you could still make your, since we're not continuing hypothetically the public hearing, if you close it tonight, we can have that meeting when it's available for your review. We just have to provide, the proper open meeting law
Okay,
notice.
why don't we do that?
So I don't want to commit.
To a date, but yeah, we can get it. When is your next meeting, Amy?
Our next meeting's Tuesday, the 26th, so, I mean,
But I
if
mean,
you could.
but I mean, conceivably, if you had your own meeting before the 3rd, we could have a joint meeting with you and
Okay.
do it all in one night.
Right.
What's the purpose of that then?
To get more space between passage and town meeting.
What would be the purpose of having another joint meeting?
I don't think we need a
To
joint
vote,
meeting, right?
for us, for the select board to approve the language, final language.
Well, it's the planning board, yeah, it's the planning, it's now in
Right,
their
right.
court. The ball's in their court now, so you certainly can be at the meeting.
It's actually, we don't need.
And it's our court
we
sponsors.
we don't have to approve the
Right.
report of the language. It is a joint, we are sponsoring it jointly when it comes to us for us to go through, when we go through the warrant articles,
Right.
we can weigh in then.
Sure.
Right.
Right, and it's the planning board's report
Right.
that adopts whatever draft.
So it doesn't matter when we meet then.
No.
Correct.
No, but if you wanted to have benefit of their report before you took your final position on it, but it sounds like you've already taken your final.
It kind of sounds like the report is going to be basically what we have here with the two amendments that we're making tonight, so.
Yeah.
All right, with that, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
It's really raining.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
Second.
All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Joni?
Aye.
And I say aye. So,
I will add, Mike, if you don't mind,
yeah.
and I think we can still start communicating this process to people without the final draft.
I
of the
do,
language.
I agree with you.
I agree.
I think the
That's what
education
I'm
will still be
trying-
out there.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with you.
Yep, I agree. Moderator.
Thank you. Angela Harkness speaking as the town moderator. I just want to let everybody know who's listening here tonight or who may hear this
They probably
recorded.
can't
They
hear
can't
you
hear you.
with the rain and everything.
Okay, speaking as moderator, I just want to let everybody know who's here tonight and who may be listening to the recorded version after this, that of course town meeting is October 16th. We do need a quorum of 200 people. And I do want to point out that although this is the last item on the agenda, the rest of the meeting will probably go very quickly. So if you want to be there for this item, you probably should plan on attending the whole meeting so you don't miss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, you do anything else for us for direction? Correct?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need to close our meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Justin.
I'd like to thank both boards for listening to us.
So we'll take 1 minute recess while the room clears. We still have other business. Boston Road, I was in the packet. Bob, any discussion on the decision?
None. If you recall.
Oh, you recused yourself.
I recused myself.
Apologize. Darren?
No comments.
Joni?
No comments.
I'm fine with it.
Just to let you know, we did reach out to the applicant. They did review it. They did not have issues with the draft decision that's in your packet.
Okay, great. Now, consider Bill 1732, House Bill and Senate 1137, an act relative to legal advertisement in online-only newspapers, kind of relevant to what we've been discussing tonight.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Did I miss an actual vote on the decision?
Do we have to vote on that? Did we vote to
Well,
approve
it'd be
it?
nice if you did, because the hearing is closed, so you have the draft, so if you would be willing, we'd
I'd
appreciate
be
it.
more than willing.
Thank you, sir.
So, I guess we have a motion to...
So moved.
Second.
Bob, there's a motion to approve the decision as written.
He's abstaining.
In a second? How do you plead?
Again, I'm gonna
Oh, again, you're recusing yourself. Darren?
Aye.
Joni?
Aye.
And I say aye. Sorry, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Back on to the House and Senate bill, an act relative to legal advertisement online newspapers.
Joe, are you perhaps more up to speed on this one than I?
So there's a few different bills going through the state right now, but this one in particular talks to being able to have an online option for legal ads. Board members may be aware as the number of in-print newspapers are dwindling, the state language hasn't caught up, but this is an effort to do that, which would save town money whenever we look to have a zoning bylaw amendment, as well as just residents that are applying to this board and others when they need to have a legal ad, because the prices have skyrocketed to be in print versus online. So this would be an opportunity to allow people to utilize an online option to cover their legal ad requirements. So the Conservation Commission is interested in issuing a letter to support this bill, and they were wondering if other boards such as yourself wanted to join in one joint letter to come from multiple boards.
Well, I'll say with personal experience in my career that having to do this, the newspapers without circulation are now gouging people. I mean, I'm sure it's one of the major sources of income at this point. But for an ad that used to be a couple $100 is significantly more. So, and it's not reaching the people like it used to.
Right.
So I just think, even for, it makes sense for notice that we go online.
Yeah.
So
I'm in favor of it.
I agree.
All right, so I guess we vote to go ahead.
Paul Fossbender, 14 Texas Road. I read this in the package, and I frankly don't understand what's going on. Does this mean that someone would not have to go to the Lowell Sun at all? They could just go to one of the online places to publish the thing?
As I read it, yes. So the town would have its own specific site to publish online notices, right?
So the town would have to do that, and we'd have to pay for it?
Well, so no, what would happen is I don't know how the cost would break down, but I think it's allowing a system that would be, instead of like the town giving notice to the Lowell Sun about public hearings such as this,
Right.
paying an exorbitant amount of money, they could advertise online. I don't know that they've worked out. Go ahead, if you want to come up, you have knowledge on this?
Oh,
Yeah, so,
Your name, please?
yeah, Ben Domain, 1 Pleasant Street, speaking as managing editor for WestfordCAT. So from my understanding of the law, as it's written now, public boards have to go through print circulated paper.
Right.
This one would allow them to go through online only, so we are online only. So it would allow them to hypothetically come through us or any other digital, distribution of record that covers Westford. And I think looking at that would be mutually beneficial, right? Because we're here and ready to serve and help the town and save money for the town and help us out. But so we would encourage you to support that. And I think we have pretty good coverage of the town. So
Great.
Thank
you
you.
for the clarification.
As Jeff will attest, Chris and I have been after the town for years to have the public notices online so residents can see them before the agenda comes out for the meeting and so forth. So my understanding is this will be available online. Residents will be able to see it as soon as it's posted, which will probably be long before the actual date of the public hearing. So that gives us more notice, and if that's the case, hooray! It's really good news.
All right, great.
And for the record, I can confirm their perseverance.
All right, so with that, is there a motion to support the House bills and the act related to online advertising?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Bob?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Joni?
Aye.
And I say aye. Moving along, we have Middlesex community updates and next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wouldn't want to step on your toes, Joan, as Affordable Housing Trust Committee rep in Darren's, but as you know, this was a topic at the recent strategic planning retreat. The MCMAC advisory group, they are doing a lot of work in a short amount of time, right? And so we got a lot of good feedback from the strategic planning retreat that we're using to refine the information that was in front of you, both for location of areas and some of the features that they'd like to see. So we're working with the committee, we'll be working with NIMCOG. We are planning to have a public forum perhaps as early as October 19th. It could be a little bit later. And that's going to be a better venue or format to have a more in-depth conversation. We can have more questions for you folks, more interactive than the venue of the strategic planning retreat. I do want to remind you there is that online survey that's available right now. If you go to the town's website, I guess we already have a couple hundred responses, which is great. All that is great information to add to this planning process. And we just want you folks to know that we'll be working, getting around to some language probably through October and November. And so we'll continue to look for more input from the public.
Terrific. Anything else to add on that?
No.
It's a great synopsis. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also great job at the meeting, the planning meeting.
My staff has put in a lot of work.
Okay, great. I think the next we have is review of the draft minutes. A motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Bob, any discussion on the minutes?
I have none, no.
Darren?
No comments.
Joni?
No comments.
And I have no comment. So there's a motion of second. Bob?
So moved.
No, motion to approve. Do you,
Aye.
thank you. No recusing this. Darren?
Aye.
Joni?
Aye.
And I say aye. Correspondence and updates. Anything we need to discuss there, Jeff? Went through. No, I don't believe there is.
Not that I'm aware. We did put the entire Micmac packet in your packet, just so if you wanted to get caught up, that would probably do it.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Great.
a lot of info.
Yeah. All right, at this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Bob?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Joni?
Aye.
And I say aye.
All right. See you, Bob.
Thank you.